Hi, my name is Kayla Wisniewski, and the title of this slideshow is Healthcare in the 1950s. Medical practice in healthcare has greatly improved in all aspects from the 1950s until now. Back then, doctors took what seemed to be much simpler look in treating illness without the overemphasis on drugs and medical treatments that are part of the 21st century. A typical doctor's office in the 1950s did not look very different than those of the past, but these patients were now receiving the best treatment that had ever been available. Doctors were, for the first time, able to cure a variety of maladies that they previously had treated only with kind words and tender care. The average family doctor was a busy man in his late 40s, where he averaged 5 doctor visits per patient per year. It was very rare to have a woman doctor back then. He worked about 60 hours a week and was on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If someone was too sick to come to him, he would most likely come to their home. Only 1 out of 14 family doctors refused to make house calls in 1958. On a typical day, most doctors treated an average of 26 patients in their offices. In addition to those were the patients in the hospital whom the doctor visited before and after office hours. Average wait time would be between 1 and 2 hours in the office before seeing the doctor. Doctors worked on a first-come, first-served basis rather than by appointment. The average salary of a physician in 1951 was $11,058. By 1958, average earnings had risen to about $15,000. People who were sick enough to require hospitalization in the 1950s experienced another level of medical sophistication. Surgery, more radical than ever before, became routine, and stories of surgeons literally bringing patients whose hearts had stopped beating back to life had become commonplace by the end of the decade. Hospital stays were also surprisingly short. Childbirth, which had hospitalized women for up to 2 weeks in the 1940s, now required only a 4-day stay on average. Even major surgery kept patients hospitalized for as little as 10 days to 2 weeks, as doctors came to the view that patients recovered more quickly and more cheaply at home. By the middle of the decade, a semi-private room cost as much as $30 a day, and in large cities, the average cost was nearly $50 per day. Wards of 8 or more patients were still common during the decade, but it was more common for middle-class patients to expect a semi-private room. Hospital rooms were very different then, as there were no televisions nor were there phones. In the 1950s, America had entered the golden age of medicine. Medical science had an unlimited potential to cure disease and to ensure a full and healthful life for every American. A person born in 1950 could expect to live a full 20 years longer than one born in 1900. The so-called white plague of tuberculosis that affected the nation in the late 19th century was beginning to seem controllable by 1950. The most feared viral disease at the time was polio, and people assured themselves early in the decade that it was only a matter of time and money before it, too, was brought under control. Heart disease, cancer, venereal disease, and tooth decay were all subjects of intensive research during the decade. Clear progress was made in treating them successfully. Surgeons removed defective hearts from people's bodies and successfully transplanted new ones. They reattached several limbs. Researchers identified environmental and behavioral causes of many types of cancer. Physicians slowed the alarming spread of syphilis and gonorrhea, and scientists discovered drugs that controlled mental illness. The cures people read about in their daily newspapers were often unavailable at local doctor offices, especially in rural areas and poor neighborhoods, which frequently had no physician service at all. Critics stated that physicians failed to serve the poor with the same enthusiasm and expertise given to the privileged patients. Medical practitioners were accused of racial discrimination and of denying women professional opportunity and respect. In 1955, less than 5% of all medical students were women and less than 3% were black. For more information on healthcare in the 1950s, please visit theapronrevolution.com. Thank you for listening to my slideshow.